Hello everyone, thanks for joining my home studio where I share my passion for watercolor paintings. This week we are going to learn how to do a paint house. This reference was taken from my East Coast trip this summer. It's called Pegiscow. Pegiscow is famous for its beautiful East Coast look, with houses sitting on the narrow inlet and on the rocks washed by the Atlantic waves. Even though it's a special place protected for nature, it is also known for a busy fishing community. And there's a lot of people live and work here and making it unique and lively spot where the sea meets the land. So this week we are going to learn how to paint this lighthouse from start to finish. This is the finished painting of the lighthouse where you could see, and this is called Peggy's Cow, and I tried to capture the light and shadow, as well as I also created this triangle composition as well. So we're going to learn everything. I'm going to start from the designing in sketching and how to composite this painting, and I'll start with the first wash and I take it to all the way till the end. So before you go, it's a subscribe button so you guys can get weekly uploads from our channel. And let's get started, guys. Before I start my watercolor painting, I usually think about my composition first, because it is really important to think about your composition first, then begin your drawing. Years ago, I didn't realize that, and I started without thinking about anything. So you should have a plan. What's your watercolor painting about, and what kind of story you want to tell, and what kind of vision you have in your painting. And so when I started this painting, I was thinking about the lighthouse. So that's my major focal point. I want to make sure that I capture as accurate as possible with as much detail I can. But the rest, it's kind of going to act as placeholders. So I want to make sure that I'm getting the proportions right of the lighthouse. And for the rocks, I also added that just to create a composition. And this is also a triangle composition because all the things, everything goes to the lighthouse at the top of the lighthouse. So that's my vision for it. And I also spend more time on the lighthouse because, as I said in the beginning of the tutorial, beginning of the video, that's my focal point. So whenever if you have a focal point in your painting, focus more on that area than the rest of the area. So that way you don't focus on other things in your painting, and you also lose the vision for it. And you can also see I used a brush. I'm constantly checking the angles because this is when laziness comes out. As a painter, I realized that before when I paint, I didn't care about my proportions that much. But later in my years, I was a little bit accurate with my drawings, because if you don't have a good drawing, you don't have a good painting. So I want to make sure that I spend more time on the drawing, make sure I'm getting the proportions right, and going from there. Even though I made the figures a little bit bigger, but I had a vision and I went with it, and I finished the painting, and it ended up being nice. So once I'm happy with a sketch, I'm going to start with the sky. And I'm going to use a little bit of French Ultramarine blue and a little bit of Cobalt blue. And I want to make sure that to create that gradient transition from top to bottom. And I also want this a little bit darker as well. And at the bottom, I'm using a little bit of Cerulean Blue to create that glow in the horizon. And one thing I noticed that I was using Saunders a rough surface, and it didn't blend as I thought it would, because cold press blends really nicely and creates this beautiful transition. So now let's think about rocks. Rocks are really hard to paint, but for me, I understood the concept of thinking as one single shape before we adding the second wash. So when you squint your eyes, it's almost one color, and there's a little bit of blues in it, and there's a little bit of reddish tone in it, and there's a little bit of a darker first wash in it as well. So you have to think as one single shape without the shadows or anything like that. Think about your painting the light of the rocks before you're doing anything. So I'll start with the top of the lighthouse, and I also realized that I didn't put the sky behind the lighthouse because it's kind of reflecting at the back. So I added that, and now I'm focusing on the red part. So red is a really vibrant color, and it also whenever you put red, people's eyes goes on it right away. So I want to make sure that I start with a really light red, and I will slowly build up the pigment. Because if you go really dark or really vibrant, you don't know if you're not exactly matching to the reference. And now you see I'm doing the first wash of the shadows, and I also want to make sure that there's a glow at the top, because the rocks at the bottom, it's creating that glow on bottom of the lighthouse. I want to make sure that I add that. And I also added a glazed over another warmish tone on sides of the lighthouse, just to show there is some transition happening between our lighthouse. So this is necessary. So whenever you paint, think about, you want to capture the lighthouse, and you also want to make sure that the lighthouse looks 3D. Like, what I mean by that is you have to create a three-dimensional form of the lighthouse through watercolors. So whenever I try to paint, that's what I think about. Where's the light, and where's the shadow, and where's the partition? So now I'm adding the figures. For the figures, you can see I used a little bit of orange and a little bit of yellow ochre in it, and added for the face, for the hands, and for the legs. And it's a summer day, so a lot of people wearing pants, so I want to make sure that I have some people with the legs revealing on it. So now I'm adding the rocks, and if you see, I'm just trying to see where's the partitions of the rocks. So being said that, I'm not exactly painting as it is in our reference. I'm trying to create veins which kind of like the veins, the partition goes all the way and it points to the lighthouse. So in a way, I'm creating a composition of a triangle composition to make sure the focus goes on the lighthouse. So I kind of add a little bit of partition on the rocks. So now I'm going to do the second wash for the lighthouse. And you can see the red we put in, it become really dull. So I went again, and I'm glaze overing it again. So you can see as soon as we add the second wash on top of the lighthouse, it kind of created the depth. It shows the partitions and the angles of other side of the lighthouse. And now I'm adding the partition for the windows as well. And there's also a little bit of partition at the bottom. I want to make sure I have to add that as well. And if you see, we are focusing more on the lighthouse than anywhere else. As I said in the beginning of the tutorial or beginning of this video, I want to make sure that that's my focal point. So now I'm focusing on the figures. I want to make sure that I want the figures to be a little bit different. And you can see I also want to have some animated figures in there as well. You know, you can see people are here, there's some taking pictures, there are some people chilling out at the back of the lighthouse. And as soon as we add the figures, you can see we added the scales. So when I add figures, I usually start with a light wash, and I also do something called wet on wet. So when I do figures, but still I will glaze over on top of it. So now I jumped on to the rocks. So this is the third wash, the tertiary details of the rocks. So this is when I squint my eyes and I will see like where the shadows are. When you see the shadows, here's the trick that helped me a lot when I paint rocks is, think about what edge is it. Is it a hard edge or is it a soft edge? If you see a hard edge, put a hard edge. If you see a soft edge, put a soft edge. So this creates a lot of beautiful depth on our rocks, and it also creates this beautiful transition on our rocks as well. So when you paint this kind of details on the rocks, think everything in shape. What shape is it? Not try to get each individual details. If you think in shapes, everything becomes easier, and that also helped me to create freely as well. And you can see I started adding the shadows for the rocks, for the people who are on the rocks, and that also gives the form of the rocks. It shows like there is curviness happening, there's a roundness on top of the rocks as well. So I'm adding the shadows, and there's a partition which is a straight line. The rocks are sitting on a big flat rock, so I want to make sure to capture that as well. And there is also a little bit of blue in it. And now I want to go on. Once I squint my eyes, I realize that the red is not dark enough. So I'm going to glaze over it again, and this is where the layering happens. So I just did that. So once I'm happy with it, I'm going to add one more details. There is also shadow at the top of the windows as well. So I want to capture that as well. And you can see as soon as we added that, it also created a little bit of depth in it. So now I'm going to take a white paint, and I wait for this white paint till the end. I don't rush it. So I'm trying to bring, there is some kind of railing at the top. I want to make sure to grab that as well. You can see as soon as we add that white paint on one of the window, there started like 3D started happening in our the depth and the form started appearing on our lighthouse. So this is really important to think about. Squint your eyes, and I can't stress this enough. Whenever I teach a lot of my students, I tell them to do it, and some people they don't realize it, how it simplifies your painting and how it simplifies your reference for you. The process of bringing eyelets, it's always seductive because a lot of people tend to go overboard with it. I usually set a time. I'll spend like maybe 2 or 3 minutes, then I'll stop. I won't add any more details from using white paint. So to summarize everything, always have a vision and have a little bit of designing and what you're going to do, and think about your story, what you're trying to achieve in your painting. And other thing is always focus on your proportions and have a good drawing. And I also tape my watercolor paper just to get those crisp edges on the borders, and it rather came out nice. Thanks again for watching this how to paint a lighthouse video tutorial with me. Let me know what you guys think about this video in the comment section below. If you have any other questions related to watercolors or you want me to cover, write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or comment down below. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video uploads from our channel. And good luck with your painting, folks.